Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, Mr. Cicilline, and I was going to make a request of my colleagues and friends on the other side as well, to put country over party also. We're looking at this same set of facts with two totally different ways. Look, the founders of this country warned against a single-party impeachment. You know why? You guys know why. Because they feared it would bitterly and perhaps irreparably divide our nation. In years past, that risk was openly acknowledged by the very Democrats who are leading this single-party impeachment charade today. Some of you are famously quoted in saying so. Our radical liberal colleagues have vowed to impeach President Donald J. Trump since the day of his election. They have desperately created a fraudulent, unprecedented process to pursue that goal, and now they're pulling the trigger on what was described by Professor Turley in his expert testimony here just several days ago as, quote, the shortest proceeding with the thinnest evidentiary record and the narrowest grounds ever used to impeach an American president. We've called this impeachment a sham because we just simply don't have a better way to describe it. House Democrats have been working to impeach Donald Trump since the very beginning. They introduced 4 separate impeachment resolutions while they were in the minority in 2017 and 2018, and a new resolution in January 2019, right when they took the majority. In all, as many as 95 House Democrats, listen, 95 of them, including 16 of the 24 Democrats sitting on the other side of the room in this committee, have already voted to proceed with impeachment. And they did it well before the famous phone call between Presidents Trump and Zelensky that took place in July of 2019. Although every previous U.S. president has made unpopular decisions and even at times infuriated his political opponents, impeachments are, for good reason and by specific design, exceedingly rare. In the 243-year history of our nation, only 2 previous presidents, Andrew Johnson in 1868 and Bill Clinton in 1998, have been impeached by the House. Richard Nixon, of course, resigned to avoid it. In each of those 3 previous impeachments, evidence clearly established that specific criminal acts were committed, and that is not the case here. The language of the Constitution in Article 2, Section 4 shows the inherent weakness of the current case, and you got to look at these details because Democrats found no evidence of treason or bribery or any high crime or misdemeanor against President Trump, but of course they'd already promised his impeachment to their liberal base, so they felt they had no choice. They felt they had to default, and what did they come up with? These 2 amorphous articles. We've got abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Abuse of power is a non-criminal act. It is significant that Democrats made this their first article in their document. As Professor Turley testified in January, the country's never impeached a president solely or largely on the basis of a non-criminal abuse of power allegation because it is so amorphous. It's debatable. It's very subjective. In this case, there has to be, he said, clear and unequivocal proof of a quid pro quo. That does not exist here. Democrats know there's 0 direct evidence in the record of these proceedings to prove their case, and it's rather shocking that they built their impeachment articles on mere hearsay, speculation, and conjecture that wouldn't even be admissible in your local traffic court. Democrats include bold allegations that are completely unsupported by the evidentiary record. For example, Article 1 alleges corrupt purposes or intent at least 8 times, but presents 0 proof for the claim. There's also 0 proof that, for example, President Trump was pursuing personal benefit or ignored or injured the interest of the country. To the contrary, the record is clear he was doing exactly the opposite. There's 4 indisputable facts in the record today that clearly destroy this case. Both President Trump and President Zelensky say there was no pressure exerted. The July 25th call transcript shows no conditionality between aid funding and an investigation. Ukraine was not aware that aid was delayed when the president spoke, and Ukraine never opened an investigation but still received aid in a meeting with President Trump. The real abuse of power here is on the part of the House Democrats, as they have recklessly pursued this impeachment, and they've done so at the detriment of our rules, our procedures, and our constitutionally guaranteed due process. There's no way that they have obstructed Congress here, or they have a legitimate claim to that, because that's what every president has done in the modern era. All the president did was assert a legitimate executive privilege and immunity to avoid subpoenas to various White House officials, but that's always been resolved in the 3rd branch of government, in the courts. They don't have time for that because they're afraid that Donald Trump's going to get reelected. And in fact, that he may get reelected by an even larger margin. They can't stand this president. They bristle at literally everything he does. But in our system, Congress doesn't get to remove a president just because they don't like him. They don't get to ignore the Constitution just because they abhor his policies, his staff members, or his manner of speaking. When the rule of law in our system rules, we all do better, and it has to be followed, defended, and preserved. I pray that we can still do that when this charade is over and after this dangerous precedent is set for the future of this blessed nation. I would say this again as I did in the last hearing. God help us. I yield back.